There is a really good Mad Max game inside Mad Max, and you can feel it almost immediately. The car is loud, the wasteland is hostile, the fights are messy and physical, the explosions feel like they belong here, and when the game stays focused on Max, your car, and the road ahead, everything works so much better than I expected. But I gotta say, the longer I played, the less this became about whether Mad Max has good moments, because it does, and the more it became about whether Mad Max knows when to stop repeating them. Hi, I'm Vadd. I review games after finishing them, and in this video, I'm here to tell you that Mad Max isn't broken. It has a strong core stretched across a number of very familiar open world structures, and at its best, it is a brutal car combat game about clawing your way through the wasteland one upgrade at a time. At its worst, Mad Max is just another map full of camps, scraps, insignias, snipers, convoys, and objectives that all start to blur together. Here's my simple question. Is Mad Max still worth playing because its core ideas work, or are the best parts buried under too much repetition? Listen, I played Mad Max focusing on the campaign and the main open world systems around it. And I think that matters a lot here because the game is not short and it's not linear. A lot of the experience comes from clearing territories, upgrading strongholds, collecting scrap, and improving your car as you push through the wasteland. To be clear, I did not treat this like a check every box possible, 100% grind every single thing, because by the later hours, I was skipping large chunks of repeated activities because the game has already made its point. Once you've cleared enough of the camps, broken enough scarecrows, looted enough scrap, you really start to feel that core play loop. You know, Mad Max at the open is absolutely the strongest point, significantly more than the middle, especially at the end. That main path, I think, in Mad Max is stronger than the full completion journey. I think at its best, everything works here when you treat it like a rough road trip and not a checklist. Hey, if this review is making sense so far, liking the video genuinely helps the channel and tells YouTube that more people want to see this. I review games start to finish, and if you want to support the work more directly, there's a single pay what you want option through Patreon that helps fuel future videos. No pressure, just making you aware of it. Thanks. I think it's important to know that Mad Max is an open world action game built around kind of two halves, two very intertwined halves. On foot, it's a simple brawler. You walk around, you punch, you counter, you use weapons when needed, you clear the camps, you gather resources. The other half is in the car, and all of a sudden things become a little more specific. Your car is really the center of the game. You upgrade it, you armor it, you weaponize it, you rely on it for survival. It's how you travel, it's how you fight, it's how you tear down structures, it's how you earn your money and push through the world. And overall, the Mad Max loop is so straightforward. You enter a region, you weaken the enemy control by destroying the camps, snipers, scarecrows, convoys, and so on. You gather your scrap, you upgrade Max, you upgrade your car, and you move forward. I think this setup works. You know, a Mad Max game should be about survival through machinery. The car should feel like an extension of the character, and the world should feel harsh and desperate. And I think it does all those things very, very well. The problem here isn't the idea. For me, I think the idea is stronger than the variations supporting it. Listen, Mad Max sets itself up as a harsh survival road story. You start with nothing, you're left for dead, the world is ruled by scrap and gasoline, everything's broken. Max just wants to get back on the road, and this is such a strong opening foundation. And early on, the game sells it. The visuals, the sound, the violence, it all lands, it all fits. It feels like it's building towards a truly focused survival story about rebuilding the perfect machine. But ultimately, what it actually delivers is a much more standard open world territory clearing game with strong car combat. This is a clear gap here. The fantasy, the experience being sold is so specific, but the structure here is so familiar. At first, all the scrap you pick up feels so very important. The camps feel very, very dangerous. The wasteland feels hostile. Later on, your scrap becomes just a currency. The camps become routine and the danger becomes predictable. I don't think this ruins the game, but it changes the experience. Mad Max isn't really a deep survival game. It's an action game with a strong setting and a lot of repeated open world work. And whether that works for you depends on how much repetition you can tolerate. The first few hours of Mad Max are easily the strongest. Max is weak, your car is gone, and every upgrade matters. You feel like you're building towards something, and progression has a very meaningful aspect. I think that early loop works because everything is so new. Clearing a camp really feels like you're just surviving on the edge. Taking out that sniper in the distance all of a sudden makes travel safer, and the world changes because you did something. Convoys are real threats. As you progress, the middle of the game will hit you. You've seen enough of the systems, you understand them. Yes, the camps have gotten bigger, but not better. The objectives just repeat. The structure becomes obvious. Yes, you break more scarecrows, you clear more camps, you collect more scraps. But the first time it feels like survival, but later on it'll feel like maintenance. Again, I think this shift matters because Mad Max is strongest when it feels desperate. Once it starts feeling like a chore, I think the atmosphere loses some of the impact. Yes, the late game story helps to improve things because it tightens things down a little bit as the game pushes you towards Gas Town, getting your big V8 engine, figuring out who the bad guys are, who you need to fight, whether you're going to make it to the Plains of Silence. It starts to regain direction. I think the road starts to matter again, and that's when you see a tighter version of what this game could have been and maybe should have been. I think that Mad Max is really here built on impact more than depth. I think the hand-to-hand combat is so simple, but it's effective. The hits feel heavy, the counters are clear, the fights are messy in a way that just fits the world. The issue isn't the simplicity, it's that combat doesn't evolve very much. After a few hours, most every single fight plays out the exact same way. And you know what? If you play your games in short bursts, I don't think that's such a bad thing. But it becomes a bad thing if you're clearing camp after camp after camp. If you're playing in a longer session, you're going to start to really notice that. I think the car combat's a little stronger, but it's also because there's a little more chaos to it. You're ripping armor off enemies. The harpoon just feels great. It slams into vehicles. It feels powerful. You ram things, you boost. The convoy fights capture the absolute chaos that I think this game is aiming for. And ultimately, this is where Mad Max feels most like itself, here in the car combat. But even here, the repetition creeps in. That core loot, the chase, the ram, the repair, it just stays the same. And I think exploration has a similar split here. The world looks excellent. Everything feels very on brand. It feels harsh and empty in all the right ways. But mechanically, I think exploration often means just finding another marker. The world looks like survival, but it plays like completion. Curiously enough, I think progression is one of Mad Max's greatest strengths, especially with your car. Upgrading your vehicle feels meaningful mostly the entire way through. It continues to get tougher, stronger, and just more capable. And I think that progression ties directly into how you experience and interact with the world. And even with your character Max, the upgrades still matter. They're just less interesting. They tend to improve your stats, more so change how you're going to play. And again, I come down to this split moment here where the car feels like identity, but Max feels like numbers go up. And I think that long-term motivation is really going to depend on how you play. If you're really focused on building the car and moving through the story, I think the progression works pretty well. But if you're really focused on clearing everything, it really starts to feel like busy work. Yes, some rewards do matter, but others just exist to fill the map and take your time. And that's the difference here between progression that changes the game and progression that just keeps you occupied. Mad Max actually has both, between your car and between Max. I think the story here is very simple and works. Max wants a car, he wants to survive, he wants to reach the Plains of Silence. I don't think it's delivered in a way that makes that clear the whole way through, but it sets it up in the opening moments, and it's pretty simple here. I think those strongest moments come when the story starts to get personal. Later on, you meet a character named Hope and Glory, and all of a sudden they add this weight because they're the first characters that truly challenge your character Max's instinct to keep moving. When you see hope has been taken right when you first meet them, all of a sudden the game stops feeling like a list of objectives and it starts feeling like something is collapsing. You have this villain that's kind of straightforward, but he represents the kind of power that the world of Mad Max rewards. I think the presentation overall carries a lot of the story experience. To be clear, the world looks right, it's harsh, it's dusty, it's broken. The cars all feel like weapons, the sound design, the engines, the impact, the explosions, they do a lot of the work here. But I think it also highlights the main issue. The story is very lean, and I think the world design is bloated because Max wants to keep moving, but the game keeps asking you to stop. The most interesting characters show up too late. And, when the biggest strength is the car, yes, the car gives the game identity and everything connects back to it and upgrades feel meaningful, but the car is more of a fun tool than a true narrative tool. And, I do think the combat and the driving are so physical and so grounded. The atmosphere is there, the world looks right, it sounds right, but I keep coming back to the biggest weakness here in Mad Max is the repetition. The camps, collectibles, and map activities repeat far too often with very little, if any, variation. And then you pile on top of that, the second weakness here is the pacing. The game is much longer than its ideas. And then all of a sudden you start looking at things and you go, but the on-foot gameplay, when you're walking around, it never really evolves to support how often you have to use it. I think Mad Max is better when you don't try and see everything. I think if you try to approach this like a completionist, it kind of hurts the experience. I don't think Mad Max needs more systems. I think it needs less padding. Fewer camps, more variety. Fewer collectibles, more meaning. Just a stronger regional identity. I think the core is already there, but for me, the problem here is how much it's stretched. Mad Max should feel like a desperate drive through the darkness, through the danger, through the depths of insanity. But too often it feels like you're just clearing the map. When we talk about value for money here, at full price, the repetition becomes much harder to overlook or justify. Yes, on paper, there's a full campaign, a strong atmosphere, and a satisfying upgrade loop. Those things are true. They are all in the game. But not all of that content, not all that experience is equally strong. If we're just here to measure value by hours played, it's a pretty generous offering. But if you're more interested in measuring how long things stay fresh, that's much more mixed. I think the best approach for a journey through Mad Max is a focused adventure. Play the story, build the car, do the side content that still feels fun to you, and move on. I think for the right player, this is going to be such an easy recommendation. Very few games in today's market are doing what Mad Max does. But I think for a lot of people, this is going to be a tough sell, because Mad Max is really for players who want that vehicle-focused action game. It's about building one powerful car. If that sounds appealing to you, this works. I think Mad Max is for players who care about atmosphere and just don't need the deep systems. If you're the type of player who enjoys open world clearing in moderation, this is such a good journey of just clearing through an open world. But if you're the type of player who wants deep combat progression, this is not the game for you. If you're a huge Mad Max fan but you tend to bounce off repetition, this is going to be a tough pill to swallow. Or if you're the type of player that's really expecting more of a survival sandbox in the Mad Max world, this isn't that. And I think players who really want each hour and each kind of segment, each act, the early, the middle, the late game to feel fresh, you're just not going to get that here. Overall, I think Mad Max is a good game with a good core and way too much repetition around it. I think the car, your vehicle, is the absolute star of the show. I think the world has such a good atmosphere that this game lands. I think the combat has the right weight to it. I think the story works best when it stays focused. Listen, the open world structure stretches the experience just too far. For me, I enjoyed my time because I didn't try and do everything. Play it for the car, play it for the atmosphere, play it for the road. Just don't feel like you need to clear every icon, because I think the more it becomes about the map, the less powerful this experience becomes. And the more it stays about the road and the chaos and the fun of being in the Mad Max world and the explosions and the adventure, the more it feels like the game it was meant to be. At the time of review, Mad Max is awarded a 2 out of 5. I recommend.